No one knew who Ray White was. Ray White was not a name that you could walk down the street and say, do you know who Ray White is? They just sort of say Ray who. The model behind my thinking was if we could win the biggest 3 markets in New Zealand, we would win New Zealand.
And what were those markets? Starting his real estate career at the ripe age of 17, flash forward a few years, and he is the former CEO and now executive chairman of Ray White New Zealand. He helped shape a business that now spans nearly 200 offices across the country, turning over in excess of 20 billion in annual residential sales.
I left school and I actually had a good mate that I was at school with. His dad ran a real estate office.
How the hell do you go from that to coming over to New Zealand?
2 stops in the meantime. The first rule sort of on marketing that I learned is if you have to have the industry name below your name, you haven't made it.
Was there a blueprint to that?
I wanted us not to power just good people in Ray White. I wanted us to be the best in the industry and for that pressure to come onto me to power those people.
How did the Steve Hansen thing come to be?
There were, at this time, thousands of families relying on me, and I thought I needed some help myself. Don't have the infrastructure that I believed I needed to take the company to the next level.
You've seen thousands of real estate agents come through over your tenure, over your time. What makes a good real estate agent?
I got into it, didn't have a lot of intelligence. But in saying that, you're only building one thing with the marketplace, and that's...
What would you say to the 17-year-old Carey Smith?
Brian White, I went on a boat cruise with him and I asked him, what's the number one trait you need to have as a leader? He said...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Now Selling podcast, where we sit down with some of the most interesting minds in real estate business and leadership to uncover the stories behind the success. Today, I've got someone across from me who needs very little introduction, but as is the tradition on the Now Selling podcast, we're going to give him one anyway. So strap in, here we go. Starting his real estate career at the ripe age of 17, flash forward a few years, and he is the former CEO and now executive chairman of Ray White New Zealand. He helped shape not only a business that now spans nearly 200 offices across the country, turning over in excess of 20 billion in annual residential sales, but an entire generation of leaders and agents who have built their careers have done so under his guidance. In addition to his vast industry experience, he's also the author of the book Deliver. He is a graduate of Harvard Business School, a life member of the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, and most importantly, because I did call a few people and ask them, a close contact and ally to some of the most successful real estate individuals and business owners in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and a privilege to have on the show the one and only Carey Smith.
Good morning, Chip.
How are you, mate?
Good, thank you.
Did I cover that off okay?
What an introduction.
We're at the Business Owners Symposium for Ray White here in windy Wellington. We've got about 150 of them in a room just adjacent to us. And I know you've got some other duties. So first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. I want to dive right in. 17. I mean, I did some math on that. Now, is that around 1982? Would that be right?
It is, yeah. That's good maths. I left school and I actually had a good mate that I was at school with, and his dad ran a real estate office. And I left school early. So there it was year 10, but form 4. And I left school 2 years probably before I should have. And I joined his real estate office. Basically, I knew I was good at collecting rent. Nothing to do with this.
Well, you're a big guy.
The size of me. So I learned property management, and I was in the property management field, but I used to do everything. I'd go out and take some photos. I'd go and do the work for the sales guys. Anything that was there to do, wash the boss's car, paint his fence, all of that type of thing.
Yep.
I learned as almost as a cadet.
And where was this?
This was on the central coast of New South Wales, so about 90 minutes north of Sydney.
Okay, yeah.
And the business was actually it was a small town in Avoca Beach, so a small coastal business. And they had 2 businesses. They had one at Avoca Beach and one at Terrigal Beach. Quite popular areas. And I was sort of the cadet that went between both.
And so in those early days, were there any mentors that you had?
When I talk about mentors, there was a guy by the name of Bruce Hibbert, who was a very good salesperson. And like many of us, we would look up at the people who were doing well.
Of course.
And being surrounded by older people doing well, you pick up things.
Yep. Were you always confident?
I don't think I was confident in the workspace.
Yep.
I think I was confident in being directed. I think I was happy to be given responsibilities and do those well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at that type of age, I'm playing footy. I'm enjoying the social parts of my life. But I'm working with groups of older people. So I'm working with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and no one else my age.
What's the transition then? So starting in property management, 21, you get your license?
Yes.
Was that, and that was something for sales?
It was almost like your agency license, what we'd call today your agent license. So I had that, so I could actually run an agency, which
21? Love it.
According to the paperwork.
Well.
But actually in real life, I actually went north primarily to play footy, but I did that on the basis that I moved into sales, and we ended up at around the age of 25, I ended up buying a very small agency in a place called Cabarita Beach,
Okay.
which is on the far north coast of New South Wales, with a guy by the name of Paul McMahon, and we set out sort of changing those to LJ Hooker offices, and we actually bought 2 offices. Paul is actually still there today with his daughter, but we were long-term partners in the business until around 1989, where I moved to Sydney. Again, this was my start with Ray White, but I came to Sydney really on the basis that I wanted to explore more, and I came to Sydney and I went and door knocked each of the key big agencies. So I went to Hookers, Century 21, First National, and there might have been 1 or 2 others, but Ray White as well. And I went to Ray White. It was in George Street at the time, and the guy said, we might have a job for you, Carey, but we'll give you a call in 10 days' time. And I thought that's quite good. But this was a time when you only had the phone at home.
Of course, yeah.
So you didn't have any other like mobile devices.
You're not sending out a tweet or a...
Yeah, so I was basically in a 1-bedroom sort of studio in Sydney, and come the 10 days, I'd already knocked back a job from another company.
Gotcha.
And day 10 came, and I'm sitting by the phone at home.
Yeah.
Doesn't ring. Day 11, doesn't ring. And I'm thinking to myself, Carey, if like missed this,
what have you done? Yeah, of course.
What have you done? So I'm in Sydney basically with no job. And so I decided to ring Ray White.
Yep.
And the guy says, hasn't someone rung you? You've got the job.
Oh, okay. It's a good organisation on there.
Thanks very much. And basically that's when I started with Ray White in December 1989. I started as a development person. Much to be said, it was really just about driving around to the various businesses, having a point of contact and being involved with those businesses.
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure. But Ray White were very young.
Yes.
They had only just moved into New South Wales at that time, and they were associated with a business called ERA, so it was called Ray White ERA.
Was there something about Ray White that was attractive to you? Because you mentioned that you'd been offered another job in the medium, but you turned that away. Was there a reason for that?
Probably more the reason that the other job didn't feel quite right. The other business didn't feel quite right. Just the sort of the taste test didn't quite get there, where I felt Ray White were young in New South Wales. They had a good track record in Queensland, and I'd been up near the border.
For sure.
So I knew a little bit about Ray White, and I felt more comfortable that it was a family business as well. I'm not sure how to describe that at the time, but it felt like more genuine leadership, being a family.
Who was at the helm in those days? Was it Brian?
No, it was another Brian. It was Brian Reid and a guy by the name of Bruce Ingray. Brian White was always there, but there was the Brisbane-based business. It was not a Sydney-based business.
Yeah. So in terms of that development role, are you also trying to get officers on, or are you at that stage were you just maintaining the relationships with the
customers? Yeah, no, very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It was basically, we had a curriculum-based training. You would break that up and you would take that out into the businesses. You'd be sending the message. Auctions were always the core focus of the business. That had never changed. And learning about how we processed business and transactions really was what we did. Yeah. So it was just slice and dice of the training curriculum. And you took that out to businesses and you sort of took it to them.
What was it like in those days? I mean, we're talking the late 80s, early 90s. I believe around 89, wasn't the stock market crash around there?
Well, again, you're not too literal.
Yeah.
You don't really understand the macroeconomics of things.
Sure.
Again, your news delivery today versus the news delivery of then is sort of quite different. Everything's like curated today with Spotify. So, you just had like 5 radio stations and you had your choice of like what you're going to listen to. So really the way that the macro things worked versus the interior of Ray White, you really just remained focused on what was happening within Ray White. Tony Fountain every week used to take me into the auction room and learn auctions. And there was a lady by the name of Miff Porter who was very influential on my career, particularly in the training part, to learn how to present and to understand people.
So you're in Sydney, you're a young, hot gun business development manager for this up-and-coming brand, Ray White. It's all very exciting. How the hell do you go from that to coming over to New Zealand? And, well, I'll let you tell the story of what you did because it's actually an amazing story. But how did that transition take place?
So 2 stops in the meantime. One, Ray White is then starting to purchase businesses outside of Queensland and New South Wales and did their first foray into Victoria. Also, although they had a part-established business in South Australia, they bought 2 businesses in Western Australia, Mayor & Co and Pete & Co, and they asked me would I go over and assist the management team to be the Ray White sort of voice, if you like, to help Ross and Mark and the team over there to support their endeavours to bring Ray White to the table. They had great trust in their business model and in their people, although there was, the natural conflict that occurs in name changes. I went there for 2 years, and then I remember Brian giving me a call and asking me would I come across to New Zealand. At the time, we were United Realty.
That's right.
I had never really been to New Zealand for any particular purpose. And he asked me to come across, have a little bit of a look at what you think for me. I can only offer you the development position. There were CEOs in place at the time, Ken Ralph, who long-term Ray White member and life member. And so I come to New Zealand on the basis of thinking to myself, this is like, how good's this, a working holiday?
Yeah.
I get to see another country. I get to be paid at the same time.
Oh, how good.
And so that then morphs for the first 2 years into the stage where Brian says to me, Carey, I'd prefer you stay in New Zealand. I didn't still call it my home. People would ask me how long were you staying for. The power went out in Auckland for 6 weeks.
You're kidding.
So there's no power. Some people will remember this on the podcast. So we had to move corporate offices. I actually had to move out of my home unless you had a generator. Central Auckland had no power.
To New Zealand, it'll be great.
Moved to this first world country, and it didn't quite work out that way. And there were a few other things that occurred that I didn't really connect with. Yeah. So it was very difficult to move the company out of United Realty. It was a known name. It was a business, even in your area here, it was a business that had longevity, and no one knew who Ray White was. Ray White was not a name that you could walk down the street and say, do you know who Ray White is? They just sort of say, Ray who?
Was there a blueprint to that, or did you guys have a hard and go fast plan when you came over?
Well, LJ Hooker had come in with Challenge Realty. A couple of the other business models had come in and were looking, Allen's with Century 21, and were looking at how they were to move their names into the market. But at the same time, you've got to remember that there were a number of other Australian brands coming in, which today, like Harvey Norman,
of course,
came in. Bunnings and Mitre 10 both came in. But they moved their models from the small hardware stores to the big mega stores. Companies like Westfields were coming in, Hoyts and other companies were spanning these mega models into the New Zealand market, which was actually quite threatening. So while the Australian business names were good, they were very challenging for local markets. So here's another name, Ray White, trying to come in to muscle out a New Zealand company. LJ Hookers had done the same with Challenge, and a number of other models were now taking people from the strips into the shopping malls.
Yeah.
And the Australian brands were coming, and we're another Australian brand.
Yeah.
And so was this acceptable just to go and do it when there was equity in United Realty? It was hard to give the message. We were compromised on something that a lady by the name of Christine Fowler said, that she used to go out and she used to say, we're owned by Ray White, but we're United Realty. And she came back with the model of, well, why can't we be like Ray White United? As and there's all types of other analogies and sporting analogies and things, but we ended up going Ray White United.
I see. Was that, so that,
We did that in 1997. That was the first step.
So that was the first
Move across.
and their first actual naming was Ray White United.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was United Realty under the ownership of Ray White. It moves then to Ray White United. Now, we did all of this changeover, and this is at a time when media was not as agile as what it is today. So online and all of that type of thing, this was all newspaper advertising. It was all signboards. Business cards were actually a real thing. Some of the other things that happen today, someone says, like, I want to get my business cards. When they came to your desk, you're pretty excited.
Yeah.
Today, today,
Like
like
a few newbies that get their business cards and they're like, oh, you come into a business card.
and they arrive on your desk, and today 500 arrive, and you still got 499. You're trying to
just Google me.
You're trying to give them out, and so things have changed somewhat, but we were always looking, and the network always knew we were going to go to Ray White.
For sure.
So the problem with that was that when we went to Ray White United, no one invested in it. No one. Everyone knew, and they'd say to me, oh, Carey, we know you guys are going to go to Ray White.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And so no one invests. Today, when you have a car or you have a sponsorship, or you might have a particular thing that you're putting out, you're investing in Ray White as much as Ray White is.
Absolutely.
But the Ray White United brand, everyone knew that it wasn't going to survive. Even to the stage we're up on the North Shore, a little bit further up on Warkworth, we started to change the United and put Ray White Vogue was a company.
Gotcha.
Like it's almost like Ray White Chemies. It's sort of like, and that was in the red. So we started to transition United out for the personal name. But then in October 1999, we changed to Ray White as a company. Full rebrand.
And how many offices?
Into the box logo.
How many offices?
I think, so in the United days, we were like 56, and we had not made any progress. If anything, we'd lost some businesses.
For sure. Uncomfortable times.
We'd lost some businesses in Hamilton. We'd lost a fair few through the South Island. Everyone sort of was waiting for the Ray White. So during this transition, I was instilled as the CEO of Ray White. Brian basically asking me for that position, but also a commitment to stay longer. So that occurred, and I said yes to that. I didn't, Chip, I didn't know what I was saying yes to.
Yeah, well, because I mean,
it's like,
it would have been mid-30s.
I was early 30s, yeah.
So early mid-30s.
That's
very young.
I was.
Most real estate agents don't start till they're in their 50s. So here you are.
The question, it sort of should be this like smooth ride to all these promotions and stuff like that. I was probably just lucky. I was probably trusted by Brian. Hard work would have played some part in that. He would have seen things that I didn't see or know myself. He gives out an award called the Chairman's Cup Award.
Of course, yeah.
And I was the first winner of that Chairman's Cup Award in 1996 for recruitment in a place called Albany in Western Australia. But again, I didn't really know, what success looked like in a corporate business. I knew what success looked like individually, like count the sales and count the auctions and things like that. But I wasn't sure. We didn't have the measures, again, that we do today that say to you, you've got a good business. You just you nickel and dimed your business and just kept it going.
So you do a nationwide rebrand at 34.
Yeah.
And you take a big deep breath.
Yeah.
What's the first biggest challenge you've got? Is it the rebrand itself, or is it then, okay, now we're on the ground running. Now we've got to go and grow the machine.
So no one knows Ray White.
Yep.
No one knows the name Ray White. So you're taking off the Ray White United that's been there for a couple of years. You're now condensing it into one logo. Mm-hmm. And we condense it into a logo, Ray White Real Estate. So rather than just Ray White.
Yes.
So we put the industry words. And whenever the first rule sort of on marketing that I learned is if you have to have the industry name below your name, you haven't made it. So you don't say sort of like, Mitre 10 hardware or Uber taxis but you have to say Uber Eats.
Of course. Yeah.
Because it's like a derivative of what they're actually known for. So we had to use the words real estate because no one knew us. But all our competitors, Buffett and Thompson, Harcourts, they were all already identified with the industry, but we weren't. So we kept the box logo for a period of time. And my idea was to make sure that we became synonymous with the industry. So I obviously had Australia that I could look at, but we were not known in New Zealand. So people say, who do you work for? You say Ray White. It's sort of say, oh, what does that company do? But progressively, we made some good breakthroughs.
Yeah. Was the breakthrough on the brand reputation starting to get a little bit more mileage behind it, or was it more the values that Ray White brought to the table? How did you get How did you get other officers to come over, or even agents to buy into the brand when it wasn't so well known? Was that just after longevity, time in the game?
Yeah. So recruitment was the answer to each of those questions. If there was any part of growth that I could control, it wasn't the market. It wasn't the sales numbers or the auctions that we did. It was how many members were Ray White. And I had the inner belief that people share equal market share.
Gotcha.
It's not something that you would say, back then, but I believed I saw the other companies and it was either big or boutique. If you're in the middle, you probably weren't going to survive. So you're either, and we had to get to big.
Yeah.
Quickly. That meant growth pains. Like, I love a new Ray White office, just not next to me. I'd love you to do this, Carey, but why does it involve me?
Absolutely.
And there were some strategic things that occurred in some of the big areas, some of the bigger recruitments, which required Ray White to get a little bit closer and a little bit more tension. Now, they're potentially issues of growth, but they can be issues of success as well. But at the time, I remember turning in 2004, and we had a market share of around 10%.
Is that nationwide?
Nationwide. Yeah, nationwide. So obviously a bit shorter than that. So before that, it was a bit loose to know your actual market share numbers, but data was getting better. And so in 2004, there was sort of like some markers that we knew about market share, and we'd had some good businesses joining us. We'd had a Hamilton business join us and fill up some pretty big gaps, similar in the Bay of Plenty. The model behind my thinking was, if we could win the biggest 3 markets in New Zealand, we would win New Zealand.
And what were those markets?
So those markets, Remuera City and Ponsonby.
Yeah.
So
really? So those, and you said in New Zealand, those are the biggest markets.
They're the biggest 3 markets in New Zealand.
Wow. Okay.
And I thought, rightly or wrongly, that if we won those markets, then no one else can call themselves the market leader. But they probably are, and they probably still are today.
Yeah.
But no one can, if we win those 3 markets, it's difficult to be the market leader if you haven't got the biggest 3 markets. Because you're always going to worry that the biggest 3 markets will cascade down.
Yes.
So I always knew that you couldn't win from the feeder market.
Yes.
So you could be successful in Hamilton, with all respects, you could be successful in Dunedin, but if you weren't successful in Auckland, you didn't play the game. And they were the marketing markets too.
Yeah. From a recruitment point of view, because recruitment, and we can scale recruitment, right? So there'll be business owners that are listening to this and they know how important that is. When you're talking about tapping into those markets, those 3 big ones, what does your recruitment plan look like for that? And who did you have to tackle first, and how much time did you have to spend chasing, or what did that look like?
So in Ponsonby, which is one of the biggest marketing markets in New Zealand at the time and still today, Bryce Eageracker and Simon Damrell formed our spearhead, and they were a particularly unique combination. One analytical, one entrepreneur, really put those 2 dimensions together, and they really took and invested in Ray White. They put the challenge into us, a number of areas. I remember having discussions about websites in the early times. I remember having discussions about good salespeople and hitting various levels very early, and what were we going to do about these tiers. But they took, Ray White Ponsonby really were proud of every transaction, and they took us to a level that we hadn't been. Now, remember, we were also trying to span the Ray White brand from Ponsonby to Papatoetoe to Wainuiomata, to all of the markets right across, and make it relevant in every market.
Absolutely.
Now, some can be relevant in some markets, geography-wise or demographic-wise, but we felt we had to be relevant in each of the markets.
Absolutely.
But if you win the top markets, then you're relevant in every market from there.
Yes.
But if you win the from there markets, you don't win the top markets.
You're kind of pushing it uphill as it
we can't. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Or it's a lot harder work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I haven't seen it happen.
Yeah, gotcha.
So we focused on there. Remuera, a lady by the name of Megan Jaffe, who the company knows well, one of our modern day heroes.
Absolutely. 9
times international #1, came into our business.
One of the most amazing businesswomen I've ever met in my life.
And really, essentially, the best people in real estate are women, and they really spearheaded a number of our top businesses. And the other one was City Apartments with Phil Horriban and Daniel Horriban. Yeah. And winning that market was all important. And they were in sync.
Yeah.
And we went from there, and I thought about Central Auckland.
Yeah.
And some of the heroes we have today in Central Auckland.
Yeah.
And how well we do.
Absolutely.
And then those people attract more of the same.
Of course. Yeah.
Like winners attract winners. The other category attract the other category.
Yeah.
But Ray White, it was a little bit uncomfortable. So if you came with a small business model, it wasn't going to work for us.
For sure. Yeah.
And so that, even in the times that all of the number of businesses start, it's an uncomfortable start because the expectation is there that you're going to have a market-leading business.
Yes.
And if you're not sure about a market-leading business, probably Ray White was not.
For you.
Was not. Well, was not for me and not for you.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So that standard and expectation that you're also saying, right? Because you're saying, hey, this is where we need to be as a market leader. If you are up to that standard expectation, this relationship's not going to work well.
Well, I wanted our company to power the best in the industry. So I wanted us not to power just good people in Ray White. I wanted us to be the best in the industry, and for that pressure to come onto me to power those people.
Yeah. And that's really coming from the top. So you wear that.
Yeah.
Because I can feel that even now. The passion's still there.
Yeah.
Like when you talk about it.
Yeah.
But having that expectation and that standard sets the precedent.
Yeah.
Right? But also you're holding that precedence.
Yeah.
And everything that you go into as well. For a better use of another word, that's leadership. Correct?
Possibly, yeah. Well, it was my game. It was the game that I played.
Yeah. Your take on it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, we got to 2004, flash forward a couple of years, 2007, 2008, one of the greatest times in the real estate world, the global financial crisis, the GFC. You're now right in the midst of your role as the CEO. What was that time like? You would have been dealing with a lot of business owners in those days. Was there any challenges that stood out for you that you had to overcome in those days? And what did leadership look like for you then?
Well, there was always a sort of saying within Ray White that we sail best in light winds. Now, I probably put a redimension on that during COVID because I felt that we needed to sail best in high winds. Sort of argument was we sail best in low winds, but I thought, well, what about if we sailed best in high winds? So it depends on where the market was as to those movements. But I always also felt that if we had a strong business, and Brian was a strong leader, that the global financial crisis could bring us the best.
Gotcha.
And so I then learned about the blocks in recruitment, and what that means that again, selfishly, this is an inner thought, I'm not sitting there like picking someone because of this, but the best people from the brands behind us will want to be with us. That was just maybe it was right or wrong, it was just my belief that if you're in this brand and it was 3 back from Ray White, but you're a star there, you were the star, you would want to come to us without any hesitation. If we had the right environment, you would want to come to us. And the other thing is that I also believe that no one would ever leave. So I never believed that anyone would ever leave. This would say to me, oh, they're going to leave. And I just say, sorry, they're not going to leave. And if they do leave, my fault.
Gotcha. And you take account.
Because I'm not providing the correct environment.
Gotcha.
But I never thought people would leave.
Yeah.
So I was never held over to sort of say, you need to do this or you need to do that. It was also the thought of saying, what's self-interest for Carey? Because I had some things that I wanted to achieve.
Of course.
But what's collective interest for the company? And if it could marry both, then we did it.
Then you're winning.
Yeah. Well, we did it.
Yeah.
And we needed to do that based on the fact that I felt that market share was a quantum outcome that not only represented what the marketplace thought about Ray White, but it also represented what our people thought about Ray White. And the more people that invested in Ray White, the greater our market share grew.
Yeah.
And it became almost like a cascading effect that market share represented. It didn't matter much to clients, and it didn't matter much to salespeople. but it mattered a lot to business owners because that was showing the relevance of the brand. Because if I could say to you, Ray White has this market share, it showed you the confidence that easy to dismiss. Oh, that doesn't really matter. It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a quantum of every person and every stakeholder who uses Ray White. And better to have a good market share than not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's about relevance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've got to be able to look after that scale at the same time.
When you look at that period and then you look at COVID,
yeah.
When COVID hit, were you thinking, oh, here we kind of go again? Or was it just a completely different scenario to try and pick together in terms of a game plan?
It's interesting. If I was to have a look at a timeline, the most impactful timeline for me was 15 and 16.
Gotcha.
The market really started to take off.
Yes.
Our behaviour was less than what I expected. The business suddenly seemed a lot bigger. It just seemed a lot bigger. People were joining us, great momentum. But I knew that the iceberg was cracking. I knew it, no one else did. You walk down the street, isn't Ray White great? How good's Ray White? Walk down Botany, like how good's Kimmy Brothers? Yeah. And you'd hear the stories of this company that was untouchable. It's a great company.
Interesting.
How good's this? We go to awards nights, and we'd celebrate. But I just knew that we weren't doing the same things that we used to do. Like our values had become a little bit lost in the momentum.
Gotcha.
And so what happened was that there were a number of things that occurred that had me coming back within the business. So there were some behaviours that occurred that I just couldn't walk past. Yeah. So whether that was signboards, whether that was behaviours by salespeople, whether that was behaviours by business owners, I couldn't walk past it. There was a pivotal moment when we appeared in the newspaper, and we appeared a couple of times. And my greatest fear, so you say, let's do 99% of the podcast about how exciting it is to run Ray White. Greatest fear is reputational damage.
Absolutely.
There were, at this time, thousands of families relying on me. Great number of stakeholders in Australia relying on Ray White New Zealand, good business. Carey sort of running a great business, all of this sort of stuff. But I just knew we were not as good as what we should have been. Yep. And there was a matter that happened in West Auckland where a guy was taking bonds.
Oh wow! Okay. Yeah.
And it's like an oh wow moment.
Yeah.
Like I'd been to this guy's house.
Yeah.
I'd had my kids at this guy's house riding his bloody ponies, and I thought, like, how could they make that decision that would affect so many people? And knowingly, intentionally doing it. Intentionally. And we sort of brought in the mechanism of like careless, reckless, and intentional, but this was intentional.
Yeah.
And there were some other intentional behaviours. Anyway, I looked inward and I thought I needed some help myself.
Yep.
Because this company's now bigger.
Yep.
I don't have the infrastructure that I believe I needed to take the company to the next level. And I got involved with Steve Hansen.
Yes.
So the
famous Steve Hansen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it wasn't that. That's what you saw.
Yes.
What I learned was about, number one, managing stars.
Wow.
From the very best.
Of course.
How to coach behaviour, how to understand behaviour before it occurs, and how to build a winning team. The second thing that you said that you did in your introduction, I actually went to Harvard Business School for on and off a period of 3 years and did a course there, a changing course that just gave me a view of the world which was quite outward, rather than this introspective world of going to CEO meetings and going to like everything that was just Ray White.
Yeah.
And it was all about transactions, about market share. And we had a fellow in South Auckland who taught me quickly that market share is not an outcome of good decision making. It could be the other way around. But I was a little bit lost in that. So Steve Hansen, for me, was pretty remarkable.
I can imagine.
Yeah, pretty remarkable.
And it's also interesting, isn't it? Is that something you recommend? Because I know, again, business owners will be listening to this, and I myself know we do. Most of us will hold the world on our shoulders, but it's also, if you don't have a desire to look outside, as you said, of what becomes almost resting on your laurels. So that's a proactive thing that you did? How did the Steve Hansen thing come to be? Did you approach him, or was that part of...
Well, I talked to him about what it meant to be the coach of, not an All Black, to be the coach of the All Blacks. And he was obviously in waiting for a period of time. He'd worked in the environment. But he said that the All Blacks, and we use this as a national sort of picture of Ray White, was a place of ambition. To sort of say, what does that mean? He said it wasn't the final flag. It was very much about a competitive environment. Everyone wants to be an All Black when they grow up.
Absolutely.
And what does that look like once someone reaches it, and how's the behaviour set? And I took a lot of those thoughts about his ability to influence stars.
Yes.
But also make sure that when a star is a part of a team, that the star gets the results because of the team.
Yep.
It's not the other way. It's not the other way around. And I learned a lot from him around the values that you need to have as the coach.
Yes.
And the small signalling that you do and how you do that, and that you can't walk past stuff that you can't walk past.
Yep.
So I used to go out and take photos and send them to business owners and say, I'm sorry, but this doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's signs now in the back of my car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we do that most weekends.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember being at the National Awards, and as your opening address, I think it was something along the lines of either get on the bus or get off.
Yeah.
Because you were really honing it in. And to this day, if you put from our business, because I can't speak for all businesses in Wellington that are Ray White, but if you put the wrong sign up or the wrong signboard or what have you, it'll be down within a day. And that is, again, the
signalling,
leading from the front and signalling that message.
And what's expected.
All the way down.
And he always said like it was the small things that mattered.
Yes.
The way guys turned up rather than actually what happened on the day.
Yeah.
Because you can't like coach creativity. But I also accepted that what you said, what I said, what everyone in Ray White said represented Ray White, the same as it may have represented Steve Hansen's team.
For sure.
And they were representing a nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything they did. So it was important 3 years for me, as was going to business school and doing work over there.
And at that time, or at the height of when you were the chief executive, you're talking about thousands now.
Mm.
You know, we've gone from 53 officers thereabouts, Carey's living out the back of Wolfram with no power, and and here we are, hundreds of officers, hundreds of business owners, thousands. Is it lonely at the top?
We had very good infrastructure, because if I was considered somewhere near the top, there were others in Ray White that had more noise.
For sure.
So Brian White, Dan White, Sam, I remember in the agency and in loan market, these were guys running very high-level businesses. We had other guys running New South Wales and Queensland, which were bigger businesses at the time. And so I was in an environment of high noise, high performance. I was comfortable to be measured in that level, and market share was still the major measure. But I saw when they weren't getting market share, how that affected them as well.
Yeah.
But each decision, and I also probably, Chip, to your question, I was doing work that others didn't do. So while there was an expectation that you might understand what the outcome of that work was, people didn't really see the work that I did. And I was always pretty comfortable in that as well.
Yep, sure.
It sort of took away an expectation that there is some work that I do, that business owners do, that Daniel does, that other people don't have the capacity to do. And I was comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd quite enjoy the fact that there would be work that I would do that others would not do.
Yeah. How much of your life was work?
I suppose it depends on if you count, when you're waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning and things like that. But I've got three boys, and I suspect that the love in my life is the work that I was doing. I have so much to be thankful for.
For sure.
Like, these opportunities don't come up. So how much, it was sort of like work, life, work.
Yeah.
But and I like when guys get a bit upset because it shows the love of their business. When they sort of like get disappointed in things, it shows that they really do love their business.
And that they care.
Yeah, and they care and they know about it, and they get, but the excitement also. But today there's probably more measured balance
For sure.
in what people do.
Yeah.
There's more expectation that and diversity and things like that. But still, I think, guys and girls get a lot of, I see some of our, chairman elite salespeople, they get a lot of pleasure out of doing well.
For sure.
Yeah. But some people just have a bigger capacity and a bigger engine than others, mate.
Absolutely. Some people just have drive at the end of the day.
Yeah, just a drive for different things, though, not necessarily like, could you put it into all those sort of things? Like I used to ring, I did ring chairman elite, but I used to ring like the premiers and the elite salespeople. And I'd do this every Saturday morning, and I'd be looking on the screen. There'd be all these names like going down like this. And some people I didn't know. Yeah. So you'd sort of say the same thing, and sorry to those people that they may not have known. But I'd end up having the kids like run around the house and like awarding each other prizes and saying, congratulations on your elite status. They'd be throwing a teddy bear at each other, and so they learn those sort of things. But that's, those memories of taking Chase around and putting signs in the back of my car, and he'd occasionally get the wrong coloured sign, and I'd say, that's okay, son, And so they were involved like anyone, and I can remember with my dad, I would go to work with him. I get great joy out of the boys seeing my role.
Absolutely.
And, they're learning values as well of hard work.
I think it's so interesting that you bring that up. I went to work with my old man, loved it when I was younger. Ari, my son's 11. He's just coming in. He's doing an afternoon, two big afternoons a week. He comes in and he just absolutely loves it. Yeah. And I think the reason for my question in terms of the work side of things is we throw around work-life balance a lot of the time. But I believe that in real estate, you have to understand that it's a lifestyle. Yeah. And the more that you can embrace that and be in a, not necessarily, sacrificing time, but understanding that you can bring family in. I mean, we've got Candace here. And I think that, like a lot of the motivational speakers and people that go around, it's all about work-life balance or what have you. But when you're in a position as a business owner, or if you're a CEO or whatever it is that you're doing, there has to be an understanding there that it is going to, it's a lifestyle.
There's more respect for time today, though, than probably what there used to be.
Yeah. Because I can imagine the hours that you would have put in back in the day would have been quite intense.
Well, there's self-driven hours. So you've only got, everyone's only got 24 hours in the day. So it was how you use those. But I could have used more for other things. I think got better outcomes, but I didn't know at the time. So
yeah. We've mentioned throughout your leadership, global financial crisis, COVID. We went through the period and getting your expectation and standards to right back again. We're in an interesting time at the moment, 2025. Wow. Yeah. And on a global, in a global environment, in a national environment, specifically in a market environment in New Zealand. And I know that there are business owners that might be struggling at the moment, and they're awake at night and they're worrying about cash flow and they're worrying about, because as you said before, it's the families.
Yes.
It's not always about, the P&L or what's in the bank or what have you. It's my administrator needs to be paid at the end of this week because she's got 2 kids, or, it's the manager that's on the road, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I know that some feel that they might have been beaten up and they're getting maybe towards the end of it. What advice do you have for some of those owners that might be listening in terms of what should they be focusing their attention on at the moment, given the state of the market?
It's an interesting conversation because the longevity of a business and a business owner, the trust that they've been able to create between their people, performance of culture, it just like doesn't happen today and suddenly we're in 2025 and, I've got like a problem on my hands. It probably happens like I knew 10 years ago. And if that was to keep going, we probably could have just kept going.
Yeah, for sure.
But we would have faded.
Yeah.
They would have said that used to be a good business. I think if we're true to ourselves, we know the cracks in our business. Like we're the only ones that know them. And we know them well before they surface. So if there's a crack that you know about in the iceberg, and it's down below the surface where no one's seeing it, things are looking good. Things are okay in the marketplace. We're turning up, and we're turning up on the basis that everything's okay, but it's not. And that can be in any part of any relationship. Work on those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like work on those things. There's 5 pillars, and potentially a 6th one. But one of them is a financial responsibility. That's something that no one else in the business has except a leader. And they need to be comfortable with that financial responsibility. And if you're not, better to be checking out because it's not a good space to be. Once there is a movement away from financial responsibility, decision-making becomes poor. Recruitment, if you're good at recruitment and you have a business that people understand and has a great reputation, your recruitment will come easier than it won't. That's one of the pillars. Your premises. People like to come to a good premises. If your premises is market leading, that is a great position to be in. But you got to invest in it, Chip. Like that's not easy. Market share.
Yep.
Talked about that before. The relevance of market share. I get all the younger hotheads like you said, and they start their business, and they're gonna change the world, but market share is the first thing that counts. So you're either defending market share or you're accelerating market share. And Central Auckland today, we have a market share of approximately 45%. That is a big market share. For someone with all the noise back here with a 5% market share, they've got to double their business to get to 10. We've only got to add 10% to get to 50.
Yeah, crazy.
And getting to 50 is a must. But it's hard work to get to 5 to 10. Then you got your own personal leadership, what you stand for. Do people want to work for you? Do they really want to work for you? And then you got the competitive environment and what that looks like. That's the sort of 6th dimension. But any of those dimensions, if you're not performing, your probably business is not as good as what it should be.
It's great advice. It's so practical as well. And I know that people are going to be listening to us. I'm listening. As a business owner, I'm sitting there going, actually, I'd be looking great.
So if you're not good at one of those, your business is not going to be as productive for you as a leader.
I want to propose a similar question, and we mentioned, you mentioned, which is really relevant, is the new one or the 5 years in agent, or whoever it is. I'm going to come and I'm going to rechange the world. You've seen thousands of real estate agents come through over your tenure, over your time. What makes a good real estate agent, but also what's something that you see real estate agents doing that if they just didn't do that, things might be a little bit easier?
It's a very competitive field. So it's what they call a red ocean sort of strategy. It's up there with food and fashion. Cars and insurance. That's our game. We're in there. I got into it, didn't have a lot of intelligence. So I'm assuming others come into it without the need of that barrier.
For sure.
But in saying that, you're only building one thing with the marketplace, and that's trust. That's all you're building. You're in the game of trust, and someone trusting you to look after their transaction, whatever that might be. They always sort of activity times, results sort of get you where you want to go. So you'd say to someone, go out and door knock, go out and do 50 courses. There's a little thing in the middle called skill. And if you've got the activity, it will get you results,
Yeah.
but the skill will enhance the results.
For sure. Yeah.
So I would say that if everyone was doing the same thing, and they don't,
Yeah.
so it could be just activity times skill will equal the outcomes, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
So I suspect if the activity is not as high as another agent, then the agent with the higher activity will get the result, but then the agent with the higher activity and the higher skill gets fantastic results. If you were to say what's the difference, it's probably just hard work and building trust.
Yeah. Behavior, attitude.
Yeah, just building trust.
Yeah. I think that the generation of agents that's coming in at the moment, what we're starting to see is it's a younger generation. It's, for our office, which might be a plus, it's very much, we've got this wonderful technology, Nurture Cloud now, which we've been speaking about at this symposium, which is, again, independent to Ray White. It's absolutely fantastic. Where do you think the industry is heading? And I won't put a label on it in terms of years, but what opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, where do you think things are heading? Because we've got part of the commentary being, well, robots are going to replace everyone and anyone, right? So,
yeah.
But at the same time, does that trust that you're talking about, does that still have an emotional variable to it that can only be done through what we're doing right now, face-to-face, human interaction? Is that something that will trump AI and technology? What are your thoughts in terms of where you see the industry going?
Well, if the past and the present is an indication of the future, and it always sort of has to be, it's been very slow incremental changes. Like I could go to your office, people are still working at desks.
Yep.
Some are still bringing in their lunch.
Yep.
You've got some signboards.
Yep.
You're doing open homes.
Absolutely.
And you're getting there in, usually a car with 4 wheels.
Yep.
And although the technology has changed somewhat in regards to our efficiency, we are no more efficient than what we were. Essentially, the efficiency could come from more people, but not actually productivity. So many of the things that we rely on in the space of the real estate area are much the same. We put in an ad, we expect a phone call, we expect an email, we expect someone, and then we convert, and then we see them there, and then we follow up. And that process has not changed. The only thing that has changed, which does concern me, is the monetization of the lead.
Gotcha.
If we don't look at ourselves as an industry and start advocating the monetization of the lead, we're going to lose the lead completely.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're giving it to other companies. We're giving it to portals. We're giving it to NPS companies. We're giving it to a number of other companies. They're rehashing that and they're selling it back to us. And at the moment, we're happy to pay. You talked about the difference between a lazy agency and a good agency will have its own lead area. We've got good databases.
Yep.
We're not proficient.
Yep.
Nurture Cloud will answer that question. But if we continue to allow lead generation to be easy and given to us and paid for us, expect that we're going to depreciate the industry considerably.
Yeah, interesting.
And our work involved in that.
Yes.
Because there is more people making contact about real estate today than there is just you and I.
Yeah.
And they're not real estate agents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So be careful of what we wish for when we sit there and say, I just want someone to ring me and sell my house. Today it'll cost you money.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost the lead side of things is I want to get it now. I see a consistency across the most successful people I know within this business, whether they're agents or owners, coming down to their ability to be able to establish and maintain relationships.
Yeah.
And effectively what we are trying to do as agents, as people, is help solve problems and help people achieve their goals. And that and that comes back to exactly what you were saying before, trust. You have to build the trust.
Yeah.
And whether that starts at a knock on the door, because you're letting people know about an open for inspection that's going on, whether that's calling around and letting people know about the latest market review or what have you, or whatever that is, you've got to be able to be invested in building the trust. And it comes down to the work. Whereas I feel like now everyone, and hey, people watch the Gavin Rubinsteins of the world, the Lux listings, and
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet, you and me, Carey, but one day we'll have our own show,
Yeah.
But especially that younger generation, and they come in and they think it's all, oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to go into this and the mansions and the things and the this,
Yeah.
but they don't see, and all you've got to do is, Gavin, go and YouTube Gavin Rubinstein, you'll see the amount of work that has gone in.
Well, the years he spent in Ray White Double Bay was unbelievable. Him building his business, a number of others as well, Elliot, and they're not overnight.
No. I see 2 books on,
Yes.
on this table here.
Yes.
Now, Deliver. Talk to me about Deliver.
Yeah.
Because this is your book
Yes.
that you wrote.
So it's just some leadership lessons, 36 leadership lessons that I put together. But it comes from a letter that I write to myself every year.
I love this.
So I write myself a letter every year, Dear Carey letter, and hence that's what Deliver is about. It's sort of into the mailbox. And that letter just comprises 4 things. First, it comprises family, relationships, wealth. So I tell myself, no more watches, no more, no more wasting money. And basically, and then work. And so it comprises the 4. And it will start with, Carey, you've had a good year. Carey, you've had a disappointing year. Carey, you've did things that you shouldn't have done. So every year I say I'm going to go to the gym, and I don't get there, but it's a great thing about writing a letter every year. I put it in next year.
Exactly, yeah.
But I don't open that letter, so I close it, and it gets sealed for the year. Then I come back and read it a year later.
So it's almost like a review at the end of the year, is it? Or is it more?
Well, it's a small review. So the first paragraph is a small review of what I've achieved, but I open up the previous letter at the same time. So what I do know is whatever was in the letter that I did do, it remained important for me to do that. It could be small things like, hugging the kids more. Yes. It could be small things like attending certain events. It could be just regulated things that I know that are the 1%ers. Yeah. And if I change them, it's back to that sort of iceberg thing. If I consciously write it down and I change it, then I'll do that. Yeah. And the only other one that comes from is I've done this for a long period of time, which is like a 5-year memory book.
Wow.
If you like, looks something like that. Yeah. The colours actually mean something.
Yeah.
So the colours, red is a bad day.
Yeah. Wow.
And green is a good day. But as I've changed jobs, I've actually had a lot more green.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Than what I used to have.
Of course.
These books used to have a lot of red in them, which is quite interesting.
Does this practice help with your mental health as well? Is it more of a...
I started 15 years ago before sort of mental health was the go, but it's allowed me to snapshot the day. So it's lines every day. Yeah. It just allows me to snapshot the day. It allows me to exercise my mind on where the day has finished.
Yeah.
It allows me to capture today.
Yes.
So we'll remember that I did this today and it's captured, and I'll look back on that and just hope it's not in red. Jeb, it's like, but it's something that I've done for a long period of time. I was gifted the book early, and for the last 15 years I've been able to look back at certain things and remember certain things. So each day I'll look back at every day on the last 4 years.
And I can imagine as well that if you take the mental health side of things out, but say for example a red day, getting that out in some sort of expressionism, and then helping that not carrying that into the next day for example, or then, because it's funny, isn't it? And I can again talk about scale, but you'll get a call from someone, but and that might aggravate you because you're carrying that frustration from there or yesterday or what have you. But then at the same time, putting something green in or something, and then all of a sudden having a positivity that goes into the next cycle.
It does give me closure. I've always enjoyed writing letters generally, and sometimes I write letters to people, whether they out of frustration or something similar. But I'm more of a stop sort of the theory of like writing something and then not sending it gives you as much power as sending it. And sometimes sending something can be dangerous because you type and you're disappointed and all of the other words that go with it, and then you send it, and then you think like, why did I send that?
Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
So generally I'll sit in drafts for some period of time, and even challenge myself to leave it for another day.
Yeah, for sure.
Just one more day. There's a small issue going at the moment. Friday, I was disappointed to get this email. You go back, straight away, like within 30 minutes.
Yeah, most emotions.
When you're at the hot header, and I've still not sent it, and I've probably changed it 4 or 5 times since. And it's that stop, think, then type, rather than the other way around, like stop, sort of, rather than, I don't even know the way to put it, but it's like, types, send, stop type thing. I'll always try and stop first and then do it. Yeah.
Big time.
If I can, and that's I've got time. Yeah.
My final question.
Yes.
What would you say to the 17-year-old Carey Smith?
Yeah.
Today, knowing and done. I mean, Harvard Business School, author, CEO, chairman of the board. What would you say to Carey Smith, 17-year-old property manager?
Someone must have said something to me back then, mustn't they? That Brian White. I went out on a boat. I went on a boat cruise with him, and I asked him 2 questions. And I asked him. I said, "What's the number one trait you need to have as a leader?" He said, "Be generous." Was number one. If you know Brian in his way, he has been so generous to me.
Yeah.
Like as a person, as a guy that's like looked after his business, but then become involved in it. And the second thing I asked him, my 17-year-old question, was how do I make money? How do I grow wealth?
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't be a seller, Carey."
Yeah.
And I dug in it with a little bit, but he said if it was good enough to buy in the first place, don't be a seller.
Don't be a seller.
And they're the 2 things that if you said to me, could a 17-year-old Carey Smith even understand those 2 things? I would say being generous with your time. That's not necessarily saying that's all about money and things like that, but being generous with your time, spending more of what your values represent, and where you can empower people. That's probably what I've learned from Brian and Dan and the Ray White family, is that they are generous if you return that value.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't have asked for a better response to that, could I?
Sure, good questions.
Carey, thank you so much. I've been a part of the Ray White fraternity now, if you will, for the better part of 13 years, and you've always been such an influential character within this organisation. I love the fact that you're enjoying the transition into your new role. But I know that people that are also listening to this as well would agree when I say that what you have done for Ray White and the real estate industry in general in New Zealand is absolutely spectacular. You've got such a great story, such a great journey, and the takeaways from today have been absolutely fantastic. So, Carey, thank you so much. This has been the Now Selling Podcast. I am Chip McCabe, and as we say in the business, we are gone.